do a lot of the Travaris Robinson storylines in the local hour. But we got a bunch of people here, so we're going to go ahead and attack it. So let's talk about this today. All right, here's the timeline, right? Saturday, Travaris Robinson announces that he is going to take the defensive back and co-DC job at the University of Georgia. Will Muschamp going to step down in an off-field analyst role, okay? Travaris Robinson going to be that DB coach / co-DC. Now, what that spurred was Kalen DeBoer to get on the phone and basically offer Travaris an opportunity to come interview for the defensive coordinator's job at Alabama. I'm under the impression that Travaris during this time never actually had a chance to move out of Tuscaloosa. I'm sure he was still there during all of this process. So here's how this happened. He goes to that interview process, and something went astray, all right? Something went wrong, and they didn't end up coming to agreements. Here's what I am hypothesizing went wrong, all right? I think Alabama told Travaris Robinson, we will give you the role of defensive coordinator, and then we will basically dictate what kind of defense you're going to play, all right? Because I don't know if y'all know this, but Kalen DeBoer's had the same defensive coordinator travel with him for the last 16 years. Is that what you told me?
Something like that.
So, like, decade and a half of this dude traveling and going everywhere DeBoer's gone and then being in unison. Same thing, by the way, with Grubb. Not that extent, but the offensive coordinator's been with DeBoer for a very, very long time as well. So you might ask yourself, why, A, would Travaris Robinson agree to such a title? And B, why would Alabama be so adamant about keeping Travaris Robinson and just throwing a title at him and giving him additional money if that were indeed the case? Which I, by the way, 100% adhere to this belief, because here's the deal. Read the tea leaves on Travaris Robinson's last 4 years. What's this guy been doing? Travaris Robinson's been going from Power 5 school, national title contender to national title contender, trying to get promoted back to a defensive coordinator's role in the SEC, where he last held under Will Muschamp at South Carolina. Okay, so this guy is very obviously in search of a promotion and in search of getting back to the pinnacle of his job title, which is defensive coordinator. I don't know whether or not he's got aspirations to be a head coach anytime soon or anytime in the rest of his career. But I do know sure as shit he's been trying to get back to a defensive coordinator's role. So he is going to take that phone call, which per my sourcing is exactly what Kirby Smart and Will Muschamp, who, by the way, Will Muschamp, Travaris Robinson's like best coaching friend. They're like dudes. They are like associates. They are homies, okay? So when the phone call gets on Travaris Robinson's phone that says, hey, they want to interview me now for the defensive coordinator job, he picked up the phone to his now new employer and said, hey, what do you guys think I should do? And Kirby and Muschamp said, well, duh, you got to go take the interview. Like, we're not going to tell you to turn that down. Like, it's where your whole aspirations are. It's what you want to do. We know this. You know this. So go take the interview. Now, why wouldn't he take that job if that were actually the job being offered? Well, maybe because that was not the job that was actually being offered, which is what I just laid out in front of you, right? I don't think that it was anything other than a title and a bump in pay. So why would they offer him a title and a bump in pay and still know all the while that they're probably going to run their own type of system dependent or interdependent upon the hiring of or the maintaining of Travaris Robinson? Well, you keep T-Rob, you might be able to keep some of these really great players that he's brought to Alabama, right? That was probably the game plan from Alabama. So I know a lot of Georgia fans in the mentions, and I know a lot of Georgia fans in the comments, and a lot of Georgia fans on social media probably did the look at Kirby dunking on Kalen DeBoer. Dude only been here 5 days, and we got co-DC instead of their DC, right? Y'all want to do the whole thing. I don't think they're 100% mutually connected. I personally think this was a title thing in hopes of maintaining a little guy by the name of, not a little guy, a guy by the name of Caleb Downs.
So it sounds like to me that this was more so maybe not a Kirby Smart play, but a Will Muschamp type thing, because, I mean, they go back to 2006 at Auburn. Mm-hmm. And when Travaris was a grad assistant and Muschamp was a DC there. So is that true? Like, it was more so like because Will Muschamp's at Georgia, that's probably why Robinson is at Georgia?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Will Muschamp. I think Will Muschamp wanted to step away for a little bit into an off the field role because he's probably a little burnt out. And by the way, I looked it up yesterday. Will Muschamp has been a defensive coordinator or a head coach in the SEC since 2004.
Jeez. Wow. What a run.
So money probably ain't a problem for Will Muschamp, and there's probably a burnout factor there, I would imagine.
And
right? So I don't that is true. That can be true while also saying I don't think he takes this step down for anybody other than T-Rob.
Mm-hmm.
I think they made this. I think Will Muschamp was like, yeah, we need to do this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? For the betterment of the University of Georgia and for my lifespan.
Yeah. And I think the reason Alabama so desperately went, I don't want to say desperately, but went after Robinson was because not only is it very important in maintaining the roster that you had from 2023, but also moving forward. Kalen DeBoer and his staff probably aren't going to have a lot of ties to the South.
No.
And Travaris Robinson is an excellent recruiter in the South. So I think that's probably another key factor as to why they were like, we have to do everything we can to retain this guy.
And look, man, I'm not saying it's a negative. I'm not saying this is something to point to and go, ooh, hey, that's a bad sign for the DeBoer regime at Alabama. But the whole analysis of this guy coming to the Southeast was that he was going to have to kind of not morph, but he's going to have to learn the ways down here, right? And part of that is being willing to bend, right? Being able to meet people in the middle, being able to willing to come to a conclusion and it not always be you 100% winning those conclusions. This is a prime example of this, in my opinion, right? Like if Travaris Robinson wanted to call plays and it drastically or at least slightly impacted your chances of keeping Caleb Downs, let him call plays, right? Like if that's going to be, and I'm not saying that's it, right? But I do think if Travaris Robinson is the defensive coordinator at Alabama, we don't hear so much daggum smoke about Caleb Downs contemplating or wavering or whatever with regards to the portal. We're going to get into the Downs stuff here in just a second. But, guys, it's not even just Caleb. It's Des Ricks. It's the other corners that he signed. It's the guys in the 2025 class. It's the signees in the 2024 class. It's the retention of all of these athletes. And all you have to do is just be willing to let a very qualified defensive coordinator be your defensive coordinator. And, again, I'm not saying it's a miss. I'm just saying it's the first sign of an unwillingness to bend, in my opinion.
What if like the recruiting doesn't matter all that much? Here's why I say that, because I think if there's one thing that you could take away from 2024 is that we had two teams that did not recruit in the top 10, top 15 even for the most part, compete for a national title. So what if DeBoer can just go to Alabama and maybe he's not consistently great like they were under Nick Saban. Maybe they're not competing for national titles on a year-to-year basis. But maybe every 3 years, every 4 years, you do compile that roster through a combination of the transfer portal and the guys that you've developed for the last 3 years, and you do compete for national title. Maybe that does become maybe the new standard under DeBoer. So maybe he doesn't have to continue this top 5 recruiting that Alabama has done for the last 20 years.
You know, we talked about that the other night, where if you're going to try to maintain, you're going to fail no matter what. If your idea of succession plans is to maintain the recruiting success that Nick Saban had, well, by God, you better hire Kirby Smart or Dan Lanning, and that wasn't an option. We found that out. So if you're going to maintain the performance and the output of the roster, you better find someone who does more with less, and I think he definitely proved at Washington and his previous stops that that's exactly what he is able to do. Now, obviously, the rest of the conversation that I know a lot of Georgia fans in the comments are asking right now is, like, what's up with Downs now? Because it was reported today that he is wavering whether or not he's going to enter the portal or whether or not he's going to leave or, stay at Alabama. And, look, I don't want to – how do I do this? If he enters the portal, we all know he's gone, right? So if it comes to a portal entry, just assume that he's not staying at Alabama. And you should also assume that I would imagine his landing spot has already been picked out. Okay, so that's first and foremost that you should know about that. I think the other thing that's very, very important, and I don't think you can do any type of conjecture about where he's leaning, what he might do. Does Georgia have a chance? Is Ohio State at play? I think all of that needs to wait until Alabama actually makes a decision at defensive coordinator, okay, because that's going to be the biggest, kind of deciding factor, I would imagine, for Downs. With regards to, what he's going to do. If they play a system that he is both foreign to and dislikes, he's going to the portal. I'm telling you that. I would imagine that right now.
Hypothetical situation. What if we get to the end of the 30 days where because you're probably at like 25 now and Bama still hasn't picked a guy.
So I'm under the impression, and you guys go to Georgia, when's your ad drop in?
This week.
Ad drop ends tomorrow, I think.
Yeah.
That's your deadline. Unless he wants to get into the second window. The window is not the 30 days. The 30 days is bullshit. The window is whether or not he can enroll for classes this spring. Okay, so that window, and I'm pretty sure it's not tomorrow. I think it's Thursday. I was told 48 hours.
Okay.
I probed the question knowing the answer.
Great students over here.
It's about 48
Hey,
hours
man, I'm locked
left.
in. I'm not worried about
It's
it.
about 48 hours left on this timetable here as to whether or not this is actually even plausible until March. Okay. Again, the 30-day, congrats, you can get into the portal. That's just communications. Whether or not you enter the portal does not mean shit other than whether or not you're going to get in trouble. The person recruiting you illegally is going to actually get in trouble by the NCAA for tampering, which is never going to happen. So you, quote unquote, entering the portal, that's a Hayes Fawcett tweet. That's it. That has nothing to do with the process of whether or not you're leaving the school that you're at. It does technically, but not literally. Literally, all of these discussions are being had right now. If you don't think these discussions are being had actively, then y'all haven't been paying attention to college football the last, year and a half, 2 years, where these things don't happen the day they get in the portal. These things happen the weeks before they get into the portal at every level. So, I do think the decision, the defensive coordinator spot is very, very important. I obviously know that the Travaris Robinson hire at the University of Georgia, I don't know if it 100% opened the door for this to potentially happen if he ends up, entering the portal.
So how does this whole co-DC thing work? Because if he did want to call plays at Alabama, so what is a role like that entail at Georgia if you are co-DC? Because, Schumann has been around for the longest, so you would assume that he's the guy that's calling the plays, calling the shots and everything.
Yeah.
So how does that work between these two guys of I don't know.
Y'all ever heard that term passing game coordinator?
Yeah.
Yep.
I firmly believe that now passing game coordinators everywhere, they handle passing game installs. They do the plays that they want to run. They break down the packages, what the defense does, and they present it to the offense. And they present it to their coordinator, but the coordinator's calling the plays. You know what I mean? The guy on Saturday with the headset on, he is the coordinator. The passing game coordinator is just basically entitled. I think these things were created to give guys raises, to be honest with you.